Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Shirley Min. Violent crime in Wilmington is way down this year. Mayor Mike Przicki joins us in studio to look at the numbers and the reasons why.
And would you be put off if you had to ask for a straw in your drink at a restaurant? The push to reduce the number of straws used is growing worldwide, and we'll explore the push to reduce their use in Delaware.
And let's escape to the outdoors with a trip to the gardens of Winterthur. Their first ever outdoor exhibit is just begging to be explored. We'll experience these garden follies together.
First, your public media news magazine starts now.
During his budget address earlier this year, Wilmington Mayor Mike Przicki declared the state of the city good. In this week's First Look, I sat down with the mayor to talk about that assessment on how Wilmington is doing. It's something he says he reevaluates every day.
We're never satisfied, I can assure you. We have made progress. I feel good about some things we've done. Public safety, conspicuously among them, doing very well. But that doesn't mean that we're happy where the incidents of violence are. We still know we have a long way to go, and I think the chief feels that way and believes that we can get much better. And
you and Chief Tracy announced a significant reduction in crime through this year. I guess that was as of about May, and things are kind of
it's about the same. You know, it was 61%. Now it's 59% reduction. Significant drop in the amount of violent crime. More importantly, a significant drop in the number of shooting incidents. So the likelihood of homicides obviously has a relationship to the number of violent acts themselves. So that's been a very good sign for us.
And obviously that's been a big issue going back over the last
decade. It's been a big issue since probably 2010. Yeah.
And to see progress, what can you is there something you can attribute that to?
Well, I certainly can attribute to better policing. I mean, I think high morale. We've got a contract with our police officers, which was overwhelmingly approved by the FOP membership. The chief has a deployment plan that gets police out on the street all over the place, so much so that people think we've hired new officers. There is an attitude that's changed. I think there are methodologies that the chief uses that are very effective. CompStat, which is basically a statistical analysis of everything, data-driven policing. He says it's basically business practices being applied to police work, and so it's been very effective.
Is there concern when you make an announcement that crime is improved, then next week there's going to be 3 terrible shootings?
And there kind of was. Shortly after we made the announcement, we had 2 homicides, which is very disconcerting. But then time goes by and it still flattens out to be about the same, at the same reduced level. So we're feeling very good about where we are.
It's hard to walk down, especially downtown these days, without having to walk around construction cones or this sidewalk's blocked off because they're building on this block. And we've seen a lot of, especially here where we are on Orange Street, just up the street from us, a lot of construction, residential construction. Is the city kind of reaching a tipping point when it comes to people moving in, especially downtown?
I don't think it's a tipping point. I think it's, if you cross a threshold, it's been developers willing to come in and invest in the city. That's been very positive. Not just Buccini Poland, who are obviously our go-to developers in the city, but we have others who are spending a lot of money in the city too. So I think there's a belief and there's a national trend of people moving back into cities. Community living is very important. Close social bonds are very important. And I don't think people will get to miss it until they move out with their 2 acres and say, I don't even know who my neighbor is. So, we see more of that happening and we feel very well prepared for it. We've got about 1,000 apartments being built in the city today. There are going to be a lot of choices for people. And so people living here gives rise to the kind of retail that everybody says they want, and some commercial development as well. The south side of the Christina, it's really exciting what we've got going on over there. We're really hoping that the Delaware Law School decides to locate right down here in the city. We've got some other projects that are very encouraging. So, it's a tipping point, in that respect we have. And the tipping point is one of confidence in the city.
Sort of along those same lines, a day last month you helped, I guess, do a groundbreaking on a new hotel construction. And the same day, a couple minutes later, you were, I think, on the east side helping dedicate a corner to a couple who's had an ice cream shop there for 4 decades.
Yeah.
And you said something about sort of that business and that couple being the heart and soul of the city, not necessarily the hotel. Talk a little bit about the philosophy of that.
I'm so glad you remembered that, because it's so true. You know, I try to describe to people what a community is, and the community is not the big buildings. It's not even the bridges that we're building, which are really remarkable, but it really is the way people feel about their community and how they extend those social bonds to one another through things like the small businesses that not only know people in the community, but extend credit when they need to, do favors for them when they need to. And that begins to define the health of a community in my judgment. So that we have to promote more of that in our city, and we're going to be doing that. We're going to be supporting people who are small entrepreneurs who want to help at a community level more than, or certainly as much as, people who bring in the hundreds and thousands of jobs for us, which we need, of course. But frankly, it will never represent the soul of a community.
And then there is also those other big projects as well, like the hotel, even the 76ers moving their minor league team here. That will be a big initiative that not only helps.
Yeah, that kind of does it both ways. Right. You know, it's the big corporate presence, but it's also for the kids in the community to feel part of something really bigger than their small community that they see all the time. All of a sudden they're exposed to the big leagues, and all of a sudden they've got 76ers coming down, teaching them how to play. It helps our kids broaden their horizons and lift their aspirations.
And then finally, you talked a little bit about the job numbers, and bringing jobs. And there's an effort by the city just announced this week to help people get work on a day-to-day basis to help improve the city. Talk a little bit about that.
It was inspired by a visit I had with Catherine Pugh, the mayor of Baltimore, and she talked about one of her favorite projects was these day jobs, giving people jobs for one day. And I think the predicate to this was that not everybody's ready to be employed full time. Not everybody's ready to make an emotional commitment to go to work. And so here is a case where people can work for a day to do something meaningful for their community. I got a text the other day from one of our outstanding citizens who said to me simply, "I've never seen West Center City so clean. Nothing else than that." And I drove out there, and you'd be hard pressed to find a gum wrapper on the ground, because the people who are doing this are a remarkable bunch of people. I went out to meet them all. They're very dedicated. They love doing it. It's their community. They go to church there. And so it's more than a job. It's pretty personal. And so I think if we can replicate this throughout the city, we'll transform our city.
Last month, Wilmington City Council approved Purzycki's proposed budget with no changes. The budget increases water and sewer rates by 4%, but holds the line on property taxes.
But Mark, the biggest story is the reduction in the crime numbers.
Yeah, no question. In May, the city put out numbers that showed the number of shootings was way down. Through early May of last year, there were 74 people shot in Wilmington. Through that same time this year, the number of shooting victims was 27.
Wow.
So a year ago, there had already been 17 gun homicides. This year, through early May, there had been 6, and robberies also down substantially. So some good news to report there.
Right, and those are the numbers that people will likely be paying attention to and watching throughout the summer when these incidents typically pick up.
Right.
Okay, thanks so much, Mark. Now, the push to cut down on plastic straws we use is gaining momentum nationwide and in Delaware. More than 24 restaurants in the first state are adopting a straws by request policy or banning them altogether. Their goal, to reduce plastic pollution one straw at a time.
It's half-price burger day, and it's packed at Kid Shalene's in Wilmington. Looking at each of the tables, some glasses have straws, but more don't. A couple of months ago, owner Xavier Teshido implemented a straws by request only policy.
I always thought it was odd because I don't think people put a straw to drink water at home or to drink wine or to generally drink their cocktail or have a beer. But then they would get a soda or water in a restaurant, and the expectation was that there's a straw.
Teshido is working with the group Plastic Free Delaware, a grassroots, all-volunteer group whose mission is to reduce plastic pollution in the state and protect marine life.
I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but over time, restaurants have gotten in the habit of just putting a straw in basically all your beverages. We are just working to encourage restaurants to only give out straws by request, and I think people can break the habit.
A habit that's winding up on Delaware's beaches and in waterways. Every year, approximately 2,000 straws are collected in the state's coastal cleanup.
So it's really trying to change people's behavior away from the single-use plastics.
Plastic Free Delaware volunteer Tree Sullivan emphasizes the group is not anti-plastic or anti-straw, but says using fewer straws is an easy place to start to help make Delaware cleaner.
It's baby steps. You know, we've made this earth a mess through baby steps for many respects, and we've got to get it better by baby steps. If we can do bigger things, that's great, but if we can all do our own, just to make a little bit of difference in terms of helping the environment for future generations, that's huge.
The list of restaurants in Delaware where straws are optional continues to grow. The Green Turtle recently announced it's banning plastic straws in its 48 locations, offering biodegradable paper straws for those customers who can't do without. Teshido is looking at compostable straws for his guests.
Environmentally, I think it's really good to show both your staff and to demonstrate to your guests that you care about waste, you care about your community, you care about your environment.
It's estimated Americans use 500 million plastic straws a day. On average, that boils down to each person using 1.6 straws a day nationwide.
The move away from plastic straws has been gaining steam ever since a video of scientists rescuing a turtle with a straw lodged in its nose in Costa Rica went viral 3 years ago. Now, if you've not seen the video, Mark, it's a tough one to watch and definitely makes you think twice about using a straw.
Even just the description
Yeah.
sounds tough. But Plastic Free Delaware, this is the same group that was behind the plastic bag bill a few years ago that attempted to go through the General Assembly.
Right, never went anywhere, but the environmental advocacy group supported House Bill 202, which, had it passed, it would have called for the state to charge a nickel for every plastic bag used, because much like straws, they're not recycled and they usually end up polluting the streets and waterways. Dee Durham had helped draft the bill, and she said she hopes to introduce a new bill next session.
All right, we'll be watching. Thanks, Shirley. There's an endangered species in Delaware schools these days, the librarian. As budgets get tighter, many principals have decided they just can't afford to keep that position staffed. Delaware education reporter Chris Barish visited 2 schools to show how that affects students.
Every morning in the library at McCain High School, students and faculty converge on a coffee bar to order Java and prepare for the day. McCain's coffee counter exemplifies how libraries have evolved in the 21st century. No longer just a quiet space where students read or work on papers. Libraries are for online research, collaborative learning, even video production or a jolt of caffeine.
I think we are kind of like the center of the school. Students come here individually to work on various things, to do research, to apply for jobs. Teachers bring their classes here again for research, to use the computers, and also we are very popular in the morning.
In Delaware, though, financial struggles have led more and more schools to mothball their libraries and lay off the highly trained educators who run them. The state's largest district, Christina, no longer has librarians in its 6 middle and high schools. Newcastle County Votech has 4 high schools, yet only 1 has a librarian. But McCain's parent district, Red Clay, has made a commitment to maintain and enhance libraries for its 16,000 students.
We are committed to libraries. Now, you know, with budget cuts, everybody has to take their share, but it's pretty much like our share isn't any different than anybody else's share.
Take Red Clay's Dickinson High. The library is stocked with more than 12,000 volumes, Not only literary classics, biographies, and academic tomes, but hundreds for students learning English, devotees of graphic novels, even those in the LGBTQ community. But it's also a computer lab, study hall, makeshift film studio, and coffee counter. Plus, it serves as a sanctuary for kids to sort out emotions by fiddling with a puzzle or find solitude from a pressure-filled day.
I have a lot of kids who have high anxiety in school and have a lot of trauma going on at home, and this is a great way for them to just come in and decompress. So they come in, they sit down, it might be at the end of a class period, it might be during lunch, and they just kind of mess around with the puzzle.
Yet fewer and fewer of Delaware's 137,000 public school students have access to a qualified librarian. A 2013 report found that roughly half of Delaware's 250 public schools had a librarian and said, quote unquote, services continue to deteriorate. 4 years later, there are fewer librarians. The state's leading library official calls the situation dismal.
I usually come to the library about every day. I have a really rough time staying in class where it's really loud, so I do my work usually in here, and it's quiet and I feel comfortable. It really helps me concentrate. Without the library, I would be completely lost.
I don't know. I don't know where I would be without the library, because it's very hard to, how do I say, like, focus in on a lot of other things if you don't have that way out.
The Colonial District is taking a different route at William Penn High School, spending $600,000 of taxpayer dollars to renovate the library into what it's calling a cutting-edge innovation center. It will have fewer books, but more online resources, meeting spaces, and the Penn Bistro Cafe. But Conway says red clay libraries have already evolved, organically and by design, with aisles of books remaining a dominant feature. She argues that when schools de-emphasize their libraries, the students suffer.
They're missing a lot. I mean, research has shown that if you have a certified librarian in the school, test scores are higher. And there's a good reason for that.
For educators who value libraries, the current situation is certainly distressing. There was a bill in the state legislature to put a certified librarian in every school, but it gained no traction. So many students are doing without that critical asset. You can follow more of Chris's education coverage at WHYY.org/news.
The weather has been warming up, and what a great excuse to spend the day at Winterthur. First Experience visited their first outdoor exhibit, Garden Follies. From historical to whimsical, these architectural elements will give you a new view of the beautiful gardens and grounds of this Delaware treasure.
I'd like to welcome you all to the Winterthur Garden and Winterthur's first outdoor exhibition, Follies, Architectural Whimsy in the Garden. Follies is a British term. It's kind of an umbrella term that describes architectural pieces in the garden. In the United States, we often would call them a pavilion or a gazebo, but they really are pieces that are fun, they can be functional, and when you're in one, you get to see the landscape in a different view. What we wanted to do was create an exhibition that would feature a lot of typical follies that you might see in an English landscape. We are featuring 13, 6 are historic. The Needle's Eye is floating in our front pond. We have the neoclassical folly, the mirrored folly. We have an Ottoman tent. We have a Gothic tower and also a green folly.
In a traditional folly garden in England, they are pieced around a landscape, and you can kind of follow a trail. We tried to do that similarly here. So our breadcrumb trail is Garden Lane, which circles the garden. What we tried to do is not necessarily put it in the center of a garden, but on the outskirts, so as to not totally disturb the view, but also then give views to different areas of the garden. Part of it is a thoughtful way of looking at a landscape. It gives us a chance to feature some of the unique details of what is here permanently. And the fun part about that, the take-home message, is that perhaps people can look at their own landscapes a little differently. They're interactive. They give people a chance to sit in the garden and take a breather. We can give them something to learn. There is a historical component to it, but follies are just fun, but part of it is just being able to enjoy the garden.
This exhibit sprang up from the Downton Abbey exhibit a few years ago. You can see the garden follies now, and if you're visiting on Saturday, be sure to check out Winterthur's annual Enchanted Woods event. It's always a great time for the family. You can get more information at winterthur.org.
Next week, we have a story on the power of music to overcome disability. So be sure to tune in next week. We've come to the end of another episode of First. We thank you for watching. For Chris Barish and Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.